Thank you very much, Susan. I'd like to acknowledge our chief guest, Dr. Dave Cormier, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Learning, Teaching and Student Services, Professor Kelly, and of course, she and her team organize this every year. Deputy Vice Chancellor, Regional and Administration, Dr. Williams, all the deans, other members of senior management, staff, students, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to add my own welcome to everybody, and in particular to Dave. As Susan has said, he's come a long way, and I had a chance to have a wonderful conversation with Dave, and this is a fascinating field, and I learned a lot from what he is doing, and we shared some of the things that we are doing. And I'm glad that you are attending, because this is a very important occasion when we can set some directions, talk about how we do our business, learn from the people who are at the cutting edge of things, but I think most importantly, engage in thinking ourselves as to how we want to proceed. It's called an address, it's not an address. Over the last 5 years, I've varied what I do, and sometimes I give a PowerPoint, sometimes I have some notes, and sometimes I pushed new ideas. This time, and I think now that the strategic plan has outlined fairly clearly what we want to do, I see my role changing. So today, I won't be talking about new ideas. I'd really be talking about having defined what we have to do. Well, starting with what we wanted to do, and then putting it in the plan and getting it approved by all the relevant committees, and finally it being a plan. Then really, how can we discuss, get common agreement? How can we assist? How can the Vice Chancellor's office facilitate and ensure that the objectives that we have all agreed are met? Because in each of the Vice Chancellor's report, what the Council wants is a table essentially laying out what is in the plan, what you've got agreed to, and what is happening. And so this is more about institutionalizing and assisting and providing commitments to enable people to do that. So the first thing I'd like to say is that whether it's learning or teaching or regional engagement or student services, whatever it is, this is the document that we need to refer to. We've done our debates. We have now made commitments ourselves, and I encourage everybody to read and reread the strategic plan. Now, on page 20 of the strategic plan, we make a very big claim, and that is that we will be amongst the leading universities in the world in ICT leveraged flexible learning and new pedagogies. And so as a systematic person, I look at that and say, okay, I'm sure that we have different interpretations of what this implies and how we might get there. And as this is the first year of the strategic plan, it is vital that we undertake that. Because if we don't start that conversation now, and this is already October, then we are not likely to reach that goal. It's a very ambitious goal. If we don't begin it early, we won't get there. So this is really about how the university will be able to meet those objectives. And as I said, that's a broad objective, and it is for us as a community to agree among ourselves how we should get there. And that's the interesting thing about the university, that we have lots of ideas, some of which we have ourselves, some of which we share with people who are at the cutting edge of this. From my point of view, I'm interested in that process, but I'm also very interested in the outcome. And the outcome is that we need to demonstrate with the use of data and benchmarking how far have we gone that road. And for USP, this is a particularly relevant and important objective, given that we have an area that covers 33 million square kilometers, given that there is such a huge interest in both access and quality and relevance. This is something that is not an option for us. This is grounded very much in our reality, and it is grounded very much in the expectations of our member countries. And it is grounded very much in the realization that the world's changing very fast, technologies are evolving, and we need to be able to make these changes. Now, there is a serious risk that when you've been doing your business in a particular way and you have a transformative agenda, that you will not think boldly enough about it. And we can see it in many areas where we will take a slow and incremental approach. This is not what this objective is about. This is really transformative agenda. And so we need to think big, we need to think different, we need to think outside the box, and we have to watch every day that we don't make a small change and feel happy about it. Okay? Because small is not going to be good enough, and good is not good enough. So I'd like to just make us all aware of the scale of the changes that we need to make. Now, I'm very pleased, having said all of that I see across the university very significant understanding and acceptance of this and ownership of this objective. So the first major hurdle is through. That is not something that people are still debating. We will debate the methods, we'll debate various things within it, but nobody is debating the objective. I'm also very pleased to see that there are now very passionate people leading various developments within the broad ambit of what we are talking about. So whether you see people leading in how to have the top-of-the-line online courses, or whether making headway in M-learning, or how to use new technologies like tablets and see how that will work in transforming the way we've conducted our flexible learning. All of these are now being done by champions. And for change management, that is very important. It's one thing for the Vice Chancellor to keep on wanting the institution to do something. The work is actually being done by the members of the staff, and the best thing I can see is very passionate people getting on and making progress and demonstrating to the others that this can be done, and hopefully acting as an inspiration that this can all be done here. And in many ways, USP can lead the next practice rather than always follow somebody else's practice. I think this is an area in which we have genuine ability to do that. Now, we've got to this point because we decided to empower people and groups of people with encouragement, with freedom to pursue, with incentives. So I think it's very important, one, to develop these communities of practice and interest and have people who are demonstrably competent to lead it and people who are inclusive, because one of the big things in universities, of course, people divide themselves into groups, other people feel that they are not invited or included, and then what could really be a wonderful thing is defeated by that sense of exclusion. So I'm very happy that we did that, and I want to say that we'll continue to do that. That we'll continue to empower people who have good ideas, who want to experiment, without, of course, bringing the house down. Okay? So everything has to be within the context that we all still want to live in this house. So, but within that, we're going to be, I think, empowering people to do the good things. This brings me to the question of institutional learning. And you've heard me say this, that although we are an institution of learning, I am not convinced that we are a learning institution, in the sense that I get disappointed with our forgetfulness, of course, but coming across things that we did well and then suddenly we don't even remember that we did well. But more like when something happens that is really good, I think we need to have a culture of sharing so that we don't reinvent. And of course, if you share that, the others can do another good thing instead of trying to do the one good thing all over the place in different groups. So I'd be putting a lot more emphasis on institutional learning and institutional research. And that institutional research will be done both centrally as well as through faculties and general research infrastructure. If we want to have a top of the world system of pedagogy that leverages the new technology, then we need a first-class ICT system. Okay? And I know that we have a very large and sophisticated system, which is the envy of some people, but we also know that it needs considerable attention. And what I want to say today is that we have started on a very systematic re-engineering of our ICT system, which has developed over 44 years, and it's looking like a patchwork. So first time, we are actually going back to the drawing board and re-looking at all of that. And that program, which has been reviewed by external agencies as being sound, and they have suggested improvements which have been incorporated, and I'm glad that the Director of IT is here, that we are beginning to make progress. And it's important that that progress be communicated, that we all have a constructive approach to the problem rather than a destructive approach. And so the nature of our communications is very important. Now, the first leg of that, or first couple of legs have been done. We are providing new infrastructure. We have extended the bandwidth by another 10 megahertz on the KU band, and Vanuatu and now Samoa have been switched over to the KU band system, which will release significant C-band capacity for everybody. Also want to say that although it can be frustrating, there are going to be huge changes in the ICT infrastructure in the Pacific in the next 2 years. Some very recent, like Tonga getting fiber. Marshall Islands has got fiber. So we are in the final stages of negotiating 100 megahertz, 100 megabits connection in Marshall Islands, which will be a huge improvement. And we are going to be discussing, well, we started discussions with Tonga, where we will see even greater capacity. And we are excited by Cook Islands implementing their O3B system. And so I want to say two things. One is that we are aware that you can't dream big on the new pedagogy unless we can deliver on the system, reliability, and quality. And we will get all of that to the required standard. The second is that we've already increased the bandwidth, and bandwidth of the capacity needed will be provided. So we should not have any worries about planning the new pedagogies on account of that. And of course, we are going to establish some very rigorous feedback and benchmarks so that all of the community, the people who use it, the people who provide it, they will all know what is happening. So that's my assurance. I am very pleased that we have a number of very interesting presentations, and I think this is what eventually makes the whole movement exciting and sustainable. And as I said, this gives us a chance to reflect, a chance to share, and then hopefully some reinforcement of the need to keep on walking and running where we can towards the objective. I think the main thing we need to know is that we have become very clear about our direction. And unless you keep your eye on the direction, you could drift off course. And that won't be very helpful. So part of our job is to keep on talking about exactly where we want to go. So for me, this looks a very exciting thing. I've been very pleased that I've been able to speak at all of these forums, and that I think should give you an indication of my commitment to what we are trying to do. I'll continue to have that. I wish all of you a very productive, exciting, enjoyable forum. I do want to apologize, as Susan said, that I will leave around 9:45, but hopefully by that time I would have had Dave's presentation. And I'll try and catch up after that, and I'll of course have a lot of interest in looking at the presentations as they are being recorded. Pinaka Bakilebu, thank you and Dhanabad.